Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and my fellow doctors, and welcome to this landmark episode of Decoding AI in Healthcare series. I'm Hetvi Shah, your host for today's special edition episode. It is an exciting moment as we have reached our 25th episode, and we couldn't have asked for better guests to mark this occasion than our host itself for the series. Without further ado, let me first introduce to Dr. Dipu Patel, a renowned digital health consultant whose work beautifully blends clinical expertise with tech driven patient empowerment. Dr. Deepu has been a guiding force in helping healthcare providers harness the power of digital tools to enhance patient care. So, welcome, Deepu.
Thank you, Hitvi. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. And now, next we have Dr. Amit Kumar, a visionary in medical innovation and AI entrepreneurship, as well as the founder of Doctors AI, a pioneering platform that bridges the gap between technology and healthcare. So, welcome, Dr. Amit.
Thank you very much, Hetvi. A warm welcome to everyone in our podcast. This is our 25th episode, and we are so excited to be with all of you. I think it's been a journey for the last many months since we started, and it's been a journey for us. It's been a learning for both Deepu and myself, Hetvi, Arshita, all our hosts and the MedSynapse team, while artificial intelligence had been evolving over a period of time. So, dear friends, today it's going to be a look back at what we have learned and where we are heading. And over the next 1 hour, we're going to have some interesting insights and viewpoints coming from both of us, Deepu and myself. Deepu, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I can't believe we made it to episode 25, our Silver Jubilee episode. I actually, in preparation for this episode, was looking back at our list of guests and what a lovely and amazing group of talented individuals we have been able to have, and lucky to have them on this podcast. If I were to look back at 2022, when Gen AI kind of became a term, I think it was not a term in any of our vocabularies prior to that. And if you had told me that this is going to be the thing that takes the world by storm, I would have been like, you're kidding. That's so 2050. But here we are. And it's amazing to see what we have learned. And I'm really excited to see where we're going to go forward. So I'm looking forward to looking backwards to see where we're going forward next.
So I think the whole buzz started in 2022, end of the year, with the release of ChatGPT by OpenAI, and we were all perplexed, like where is this coming from and where are we heading? And I think with this, about 4-5 months later, we decided that we really need to do something which is time series, which is continuous, which is constantly updating us, as well as our peer groups. And then we decided to have this podcast. And thanks to our team from MedSynapse, that they really volunteered to support us through and through. And what a fantastic journey it has been since then. So Deepu, in this podcast, I remember when we started this, our very first episode where you and me were discussing about the basics of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And I remember myself actually kind of saying that, for clinicians and doctors, it's so important that we start learning the basics. And since then, it's been a journey for me taking this basic education to our peer groups here in India. And let me tell you that over the last 6 to 8 months, with every city that I had visited as a speaker, we had a compulsory session on the basics of artificial intelligence in healthcare. And it was organized by various organizations, physician organizations, diabetes organizations across the country that thought that it's important that clinicians start learning about the basics of healthcare. So at least today, as I stand, I know that I'm speaking to an AI literate audience who does understand these terminologies. What is machine learning? What is deep learning? What is generative AI? What is natural language processing? What is conversational AI? So it's been a learning curve for most of our peer groups, and it still is. Our students, both the undergraduate and postgraduate students, especially here in India, are quite intrigued with this knowledge. And they are kind of looking forward to more and more knowledge gathering sessions through courses and workshops. And through Doctors AI, we are planning to do many more such activities. And I'm going to tell you about all that as we progress. But tell me one thing, Deepu. I remember the second episode we had was with Dr. Harvey Castro from US.
Yeah.
And he is a star. He's a superstar. I think he spends most of the time with the TV channels as Dr. GPT as the updates that I get him. And I hope Harvey is listening to this. So I remember this exciting episode and still got a maximum viewership of all the podcasts that we did. That just shows the stardom that he's carrying. So Harvey had given a lot of insights of Chat GPT, how it was evolving. And today we see that version of Chat GPT now evolving into Chat GPT 4.0, and we are probably looking at Chat GPT 5. So what are you looking at here, like the evolution of GPT and the other generative AI models?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first started playing with ChatGPT in 2022, we all did. We were like, this is amazing. It's going to change how we do our daily tasks, how we see our patients, how we document our patient care, right? I didn't think it could get better. And with every release, it's gotten better. GPT 4.0 is definitely faster, has fewer hallucinations. So as I look forward to what 5 is going to look like, and by the way, although we talk about GPT, there are other LLMs on the market that are equally as good. Claude and Gemini, Anthropic, all of those are fantastic models. I will say I play around with all of them for different things. I often use same prompts and put them in the different LLMs to see where what it kind of spits out for me. But with 5, I'm looking for more of an integration of the visual aspects of learning, and I'm talking specifically in medicine and healthcare. Although I think in other areas we have models like Midjourney and Diffusion, and I'm drawing a blank on the newest one, Sora, that GPT had put out. I'm looking for more and more integration of that and kind of learning my skills on that part, because I have to admit, I have not played around with image generation as much as I would have liked to at this point. So that's where I'm thinking we're going. And I think once we have a solid image generation integration into the daily use of these models, I think it's going to change how medical education and education in general will take place. As I'm watching my own kids grow up and learn sooner in their learning careers, these models and how to use them and harness them and leverage them for their own learning, self-tutoring, quizzing, things like that. I'm really seeing that we are moving away from rote memorization of facts to real critical thinking and applicability of what you are learning, which is what we want in medicine, right? We don't want to memorize 100 doses of medication. We want to know when is the right time to apply that medication or that tool. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And God knows what else the engineers come up with, because sometimes I feel like historically we've thought as engineers is not a very creative process. I think this is turning it on its head, really.
Oh, yes, it is. It is. And I think it's evolving every minute. It's evolving every minute. And two very important takeaways from this evolution of generative AI over the last 1 year, as we have learned about it, is it's the development of these models have completely taken away that aspect of hallucination which was there in the earlier days of ChatGPT. Yeah. But yes, the visual aspect needs to develop. I think it's largely DALL-E that you're dealing with.
DALL-E, that's the one.
Yeah. And the second aspect of development which I've seen, and this is something which we took up in our research workshop, which we recently held, that had over 500 audiences, is that the development of other models like Perplexity and Claude.
Yeah.
And we have seen that you can actually search the entire PubMed database, and you can actually have a good deal of extractive artificial intelligence being used in searching a review of literature for a particular medical article or a healthcare article if you want to write. And that's a big kind of a shift in which medical papers or research papers can actually be written, reviewed, I mean, both by the author as well as by the peer review, and by which the whole process of medical writing is going to shape up. So that is again a very interesting space that has developed. And I think this was taken up in one of our episodes with Dr. Tiffany Long, who is the editor-in-chief, yes, of JAMIR. And I think that was a very interesting episode. And I still remember that conversation I was having with Tiffany in that earlier days. And I think it was our fourth or fifth episode.
Yeah.
And that was a very nice conversation because both of us were in so much of gray zone as to how artificial intelligence can be used in medical manuscript writing. And we were kind of looking for answers, how much ethical it is. Is it really right to, name ChatGPT as an author? Is how much of AI can be actually used for medical manuscript writing for data analytics? And this is again a space which we have seen that has evolved in the last 8 or 9 months. Not just the application of AI has been more prevalent because now you will see every author is using some form of AI, but also the international bodies of journals have also come up with certain statements that you can use artificial intelligence. Like, for example, the NEJMAI has clearly said that you can use the language models. And at the same time, you need to acknowledge that which version of which language model have you used. And you need to also make sure that you take full liability and responsibility for the AI content which you're using in your paper. So I think that evolution has definitely happened, and the adoption has definitely happened over the last 1 year. So now the world that looks at medical manuscript writing, it's no longer kind of that no, you cannot use it. You need to use it. If you want to use it, you need to use it ethically, and you need to use it in the right frame. But I still feel that there's more regulation and more structural frameworks that need to develop. That was our takeaway from that particular episode we had as well, where we said that predominantly each journal need to bring their own structural framework as to how they want AI to be used in their paper writing and how much responsibility that the author should have in using the AI effectively. So that is again a space that is developing.
It's definitely developing and continually being explored. In fact, there was a recent article in New England Journal of Medicine AI where they actually looked at clinical research papers and used various LLMs to see how well it performed a literature review. And the conclusions were that it did it pretty well. However, there were aspects of it that still required that human touch. And I think you and I are both in agreement here that nothing that we do within this space of AI is going to remove the human touch. I mean, the human element, in fact, it's actually going to enhance the human element in these tools. And so more research continues to be done. We are not even on the upward swing of this curve. So I, for one, am glad that we're looking at how these models are developing, how they're impacting our practice. And I'm also very, very excited to see what the next generation of students and learners and medical professionals do with these, because this is another skill set that will be part of all of our lifelong learning journeys.
Absolutely. And it's constant adaptation which our healthcare professionals, not just doctors, are trying to do with this application of AI into the sphere of healthcare. So I'm talking about our paramedical workers, the nurses, medical educators. And you had a session on how organizations can strategically plan for growth in the AI world. Right. And how is it really happening out there in the US? And could you share some light on this?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting conversation with Sheila Shah. And, she does a lot of strategic development for organizations in terms of addressing what the needs are for an organization. And I will say the adoption rate of Gen I in business strategy and healthcare organization is definitely much slower than it is in India. Partly has to do with a lot of privacy and regulatory laws that are in place. That has its good and bad. So adoption is slower, but not nothing, right? There's a lot of experimentation happening here in the business world. And I think everyone is waiting for that. I think the businesses are in that gray zone of, well, if we do it now, is something better going to come along next week? Which in this space could possibly be true, right? And so once the evolution of these large language models gets to a place where the changes are incremental, I akin it to the iPhone, right? The first iPhone was amazing. The second one was even more amazing. When they added the camera, that was really fancy. That was fantastic. But now we're looking at more incremental changes, which is, do I really need this for my business? Is this improvement or enhancement helpful with this particular language model? So once we reach that area, that zone, I think we'll see more and more adoption. The thing with, I think, the US business and healthcare organization space is that they're very, very risk averse, and a lot of them are still coming out of COVID. The ripple effects of pandemic are not gone in the US. We're still seeing them because of the way our healthcare system is set up in the US. So innovation is happening. It's happening at a slower pace. And I would say in India, I think my guess is innovation is happening and adoption and implementation is happening at a rapider pace than it is in the US.
Two very interesting buzz in this space was NVDA coming up with kind of format. Yes, yeah, and you could have generative AI nurses. So that just created a buzz. That was one of it. And there was a Chinese article that said that you could have a whole hospital being run by have a whole hospital being run by AI agents. So I think these were the two big buzz in this space where people were really perplexed. Like, is it really that day that we are going to get replaced? But I guess it's not that early yet, and it's nowhere that anybody is going to get replaced. It's just going to be a change of role play. And yes, like you said, that people are coming out of the pandemic. And we know how much of burnout it has happened in the physicians, in the healthcare force. I think if there could be AI agents working in tandem with humans, it could really do good to the whole, healthcare infrastructure as a whole. We spoke about research. We spoke about data science, and we had a fantastic episode with.
I was going to ask you that question. Okay. What is the new thing, And data science. And I actually like to sit there and quote Bob all the time, right? Data is the new oil. And although that phrase has been used I would argue overused, never has it been more true than in this moment in this spectrum. So talk to me about that, because yes, he's right. Data is the new oil.
So I remember that episode very clearly, where these two gentlemen had introduced two very fascinating no-code tools to us, Orange and Kaggle, and they were so excited about it. It's like, just like a kid is being excited about a new toy that you get. And this is so fantastic. And I really did explore that afterwards. And trust me, in all my medical school days, I was never interested in biostatistics. Never. It was something like, let's just have someone do it. Let me just get a young guy, a junior guy, do it for me, or let me just hire a biostatistician to do this work for my research paper. But with AI tools and the no-code tools coming into data science, I think it opens up such a whole new opportunity that you could do your own data analytics. And having said that, folks, you can do fantastic data analytics using even custom GPTs. We have tried that in some of our research papers recently, and it does wonderful. So I think this is it takes away so much of a step limiting factor when you're doing medical research. If you could automate your data science part, your data analytics part using artificial intelligence, which is basically a smarter biostatistician. That's it. Your AI, your data analytics is just a smart biostatistician doing your regression model and your analytics in a much more refined, in a much more precise way, in a shorter period of time. I think it opens up a whole new space where you could write your research paper, especially if you're a busy researcher, a busy clinician, or a busy academician. So I think this is a space I feel that everyone must explore. And recently, we've been doing workshops where we've been taking sessions on how you can use these no-code tools and get introduced to data science, just the basics of data science. And over the last 3 or 4 workshops which you have done, and some of you have been following our activities would know that we've been doing a good amount of workshops here in India. I think these data science sessions have been very, very popular. People have been really taking that, and they've really been exploring and doing their data science work using these small recommendations that we've been sending out in the workshops. And I think this is a sphere that is only going to evolve. And just to add to that, watch out for the synthetic data generation. Don't ask me about the ethical aspect of it. That's a whole new ballgame. But but it does a lot of magic. And good or bad is a different question, but it does open up a space where you could actually do your research in a faster note. But you need to use it very, very carefully. You need to know how it's working, and you need to use it very, very carefully. So a space.
I may just elaborate on the synthetic data. That is a very hot topic, and I agree. I'm not going to weigh in on good or bad at this point in the morality of that, but it is a very hot topic in the clinical trial space right now in terms of enrolling live patients. It really is changing the pipeline of drug discovery and the phase 1, 2, 3 trials that we do here. So I would say that space is ripe for disruption, especially with the use of synthetic data. And I think we're going to see it. We haven't had quite a proof of concept yet in terms of using it for phase 2 and phase 3, excuse me. But there is a lot of discussion happening in the pharma and biopharma and tech worlds around the use of synthetic data and all of the questions about the moral and ethical questions that are around it. So I'm interested to see how that space evolves. Like Amit, I'm not a statistician. I definitely did not have an interest in that when I was in school. But I'm starting to learn how important statistics are, and these models, understanding the models and how they apply to patients, and why it's important for us to know the back end of building these models so that we know how to safely apply them to patients. So my interest is piqued in the sense of that it impacts patient care. And then selfishly, for Amit and I at least, it'll be the new budding clinician who comes out and says, by the way, Amit, we're going to use this model to treat you for XYZ. You're going to need to know why that's important. And so I think that data and understanding how these decisions are being made in the clinical realm are going to be very, very important.
So very true. And I think it's only going to get better from here. And just wait for general AI to come in. I'm talking about AGI to come in.
AGI.
Probably a lot of advancements are going to happen with the field of data science as well. In fact, I'm sure we're going to be reaching a point where there cannot be any data science and data analytics without AI. There has to be AI. I mean, there's no point doing a mere statistics. It is of no use. It's going to be redundant. So you're going to have statistics would mean basically statistics with AI. I think we're going to be heading into that point.
I'm hoping to see soon the change. One of the courses that's often taught in medical schools and PA schools is evidence-based medicine. It's going to shift to AI evidence-based medicine, because we're going to need to learn the nuances. It's not just enough to learn a t-test. We're going to need to know logistic regressions.
Yes. So this is what we say, evidence-based medicine is just the tip of the iceberg. And as we go more deeper, we get to see the whole of the iceberg, and that's what your data-driven, intelligence-based medicine is going to bring you. And I think that brings me to one very interesting person who has been actually talking about this whole term, intelligence-based medicine, data-driven, is Dr. Anthony Chang. He's actually the founder and course director of the American Board of Artificial Intelligence in Medicine. And we had a fantastic episode with him about ethical regulations and guidelines. And again, in that space, there has been a lot of evolutions coming in. So Dipu, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Anthony is on the forefront of this. I've taken his courses, as have you. They are fantastic and mind-blowing in many ways. The regulatory and ethical space is another area that I think will continue to evolve. It makes lawyers really unhappy, but some of them really happy because they're always working in the gray zone. We're going to need to revisit what patient privacy and data privacy and security look like in the near future. I think while the framework of HIPAA, and then when we talk about HIPAA in the US, GDPR, and the rest of the world, I think the framework is there. I think we need to kind of plug some of the holes as technology evolves in these frameworks. Perhaps, add another layer of a matrix layer to kind of really make it a little bit more sturdy, because there are a lot of, I mean, we can all relate to the consent and the privacy things. How many times have you downloaded something and it just, face IDs you and you say, I accept? Does anybody actually read the whole consent form, right? You don't know what you're giving up in terms of data privacy for yourself. And one could argue that, there are minimal privacy concerns there, but you don't know that, especially when it comes to health apps. And so I think there's going to be more and more regulation, or at least discussion about how to frame the regulation. Because on the one hand, if you over-regulate, you're going to slow down innovation in this space. And so you do want to have that balance of, are we going to share the data so that it allows these models to be built and trained better, i.e. Apple's AFib program that is now part of it, part of the mainstream of apps that are being used. But there are others that I think, we don't want to fall prey to our data, our personal data being there, especially as we move into the era of digital twinning, personalized and precision medicine, all of these areas that are ripe to grow in the next 10 to 15 years. So, Anthony is definitely on the forefront of all of these conversations, and it's really interesting to hear his ideas, because I think they're probably ahead of the curve for many of us who are practicing in the current system.
True. And just to tell our friends here that if you've seen the last 1 year, the developments in the regulatory space has been, of course, the guidelines from the FDA, which has been, of course, on the forefront, because even till date, I think FDA has been the fastest and the most effective organization in approving AI algorithms and AI tools. The largest number of AI tools have got FDA approval.
So I think 900 now.
Over 900. It's just growing. If you look at the graph, it's just growing. Every month there is so many tools with AI algorithms getting approval from the FDA. So I think they have done a fantastic job in changing their guidelines and adopting to this whole new demand of regulatory process, and it's always all standard, so that no wonder people say that if it doesn't have an FDA approval, then you don't have approval anywhere in the world. So it still holds a highest place in terms of the regulatory approval. But also, if you have closely observed, the European Union came up with the EU AI Act.
Yes.
And maybe some people still argue that, well, it's too tight. You're binding it too tight. It's too strict. If you combine that with the GDPR, and some people say, no, it's good because, it really regulates the use of generative AI in a more effective way. So, well, two schools of thought there, but then that's there from the European Union. Here in India, we've been trying to come up with guidelines, and we do have, regulatory statements being published, ethical guidelines being given by the government of India. But still, I would say we still need more concrete guidelines coming out. Meanwhile, we had a fantastic, outline being given out by the WHO on the use of large language models. And Dipu and myself and our friend Dr. Avnish had been a part of summarizing this whole document into a smaller document, and I think it's there on our Doctors AI platforms. You can have access to this particular document where we literally summarize this. So, Dipu, you want to tell about this, because you are the person who've been doing this particular article. So tell us about this article.
Yeah, and just for context, the WHO put out some guidance around the use of LLMs in clinical practice. And earlier, I think it was late last year or early this year, and we collectively worked on summarizing it, because who has time to read 100 and something page summary document? And I will say it is an excellent guiding tool and resource to have. But what the WHO, just to summarize it briefly, all of the things that Amit and I have kind of said is, keep the patient at the center of everything that you're doing, because remember, at the end of the day, every decision you're making is about the patient. To use the LLMs, no matter which one they're using, and they had used ChatGPT because I think that these other models were not available or as robust to be tested. They were talking about ChatGPT, and I believe it was 4 at that time, or 3.5, I forget which one it was, but they were saying that the hallucination factor is real, so definitely the human element of clinical decision making still needs to be paramount and at the forefront of what you are doing. While you're incorporating these LLMs into your practice, definitely be mindful of patient privacy and HIPAA, GDPR kind of laws. At the end of the day, they said basically what I think every person who uses AI or any sort of AI tool will say is, use it with caution, use it with a human brain attached to whatever it is you're doing. At the end of the day, you're responsible for what you're putting out there. And so whether it's crafting a sentence or creating a plan or a discharge summary, at the end of the day, I'm in charge and I'm responsible for the patient that I am caring for. So it's an excellent resource and a guiding tool to figure out how you want to, if you are thinking of implementing an LLM into your EMR or into your practice, it's a great place to look at how you need to frame your own thought processes and how to implement it into your practice. It's not the end all and be all. I will say, just because things have changed since we put that report out, right? This space is growing. I mean, exponentially is now feeling like too small of a word to explain this space. So definitely look at current best practices and definitely, reach out if you have questions to Amit and I, and Doctors AI in general, because there's a lot of brain power and expertise in this group that we have that will, we can certainly, if we don't know the answer, we can certainly try to find you the answer and point you in the right direction.
What is the need of the hour, I feel, is two very interesting things. One is having a proper medical LLM. That is still lacking.
It's still out of reach.
It's still out of reach. And I was really hoping, today, when we look back since we started, I was really hoping that maybe in a year's time we'd have some format of MedPalm 2 in our hands, or something or the other would come up with a medical.
Because there was supposed to be a bird.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But we still don't have access to that. So I think while GPT is doing very well, I must say that, GPT has grown, no hallucinations. It does fantastic literature search. The custom GPTs are great. Perplex is a very good place. It's great, but still we would need a medical LLM that follows all these regulatory guidelines. Yeah. So some kind of a language model that syncs with the regulatory guidelines. And as an end user, Dipu and myself, when we are using that particular language model, we should not be worried about reading the guideline, because we should be knowing that, okay, this LLM has been built following the guidelines. And this is, it maintains all the norms that it should maintain when it's being used and applied in healthcare. So I think this is a need of the hour. A medical LLM having all the integration of the guidelines, whether it's the EU Act, whether it's the FDA rules, whether it's a regional country-specific rules, it should have that incorporated. Most importantly, it should have the ethical principles being followed when it comes to using the concept of generative AI and a language model in the field of medicine.
Right. And we're a little far away from that, I think. I do want to give a shout out to NIST. They're in the science and technology space who are trying to create a framework for the technology piece of this. And they're doing a lot of good work around this space. But again, much like FDA, GDPR, EU AI Act, we're all trying to feel this out and see what next the technology is going to bring. There is a part of me where it's like, can we stop for a little bit so that we can catch our breath and adjust, right? I do feel that sometimes.
Overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, but it also doesn't allow all of us. And I can say for us as clinicians, once I learn something next week or tomorrow, there'll be something else that I'm going to have to learn to improve this, which is great. I'm not saying no to learning something, but the pace of which we adopt and adapt to something is coming faster than when we can understand and fully vet what tool we are using. And so as much as I really find the growth of this space exciting, I wish we could catch a breath for just a minute to see, do these tools really work? Are they having the impact that we want them to have? And I think that's the part where I think a lot of the fear of our late adopters comes in.
Having said that, there's a lot of advancements happening in each of the subspecialties in medicine. And we had sessions on AI in cardiology. We had sessions on AI in using in critical care and anesthesia. Use of AI in precision medicine and diabetology with experts from each of these space, and they were all fascinating sessions. And to all our viewers listening to us today, if you're not a regular follower of our podcast, I think you can go to these links that you will see on the MedSynapse platform to look back at these episodes that we're talking about. It is also available on the YouTube channel, and you could see these individual episodes that we have in each of these spaces, if I can say, is growing very fast. Not just in terms of the developments and the AI tools which are being developed with FDA approval, but also in terms of the research that is being coming up. I mean, Dipu just mentioned about digital twinning. That's one space that is seeing fantastic research, and our episode covered that as well. And we are seeing a lot of developments in insulin pumps. As a diabetologist myself, we see a lot of developments of machine learning, control theory, and these predictive algorithms being going into the insulin pumps that is just taking us one more step closer towards getting that 100% time in range control of glycemic targets to reach for our patient. And in a similar way, you're getting precision cardiology, you're getting precision critical care coming in, and language models being built out of the hospital database to give you the right guidelines for treating a patient with sepsis or to treat a patient with a heart failure. I think it's not very far, probably, I think, and this is possible now, just that our data is so scattered that we can't get reach of all of that and collate, but it's not very far that we can have a hospital or a region-based small language model that can kind of give you these predictions of treating a particular disease or a particular syndrome. It's not very far. And if I'm not overseeing or not being too much of a visionary, I would say in the next 1 to 2 years, you would find a lot of research in the space where people would try to develop small to medium language model algorithms, which are region specific, and it would be based on their database for treating a particular disease. So these specialties are going to see a lot of these developments. And so would genomics and life science.
Yeah. Agreed. And actually, the example I was going to give was, I believe it was Zane who was talking about AI in cardiology, where he is working on fine-tuning EKG interpretation, right? We all have those, the EKGs where on the top it spits out whatever normal or whatever finding it has, which usually is incorrect. But he's working on a very specific, like each of the dots on an EKG. I mean, he's really getting into the nitty-gritty of what that data looks like. And in fact, it comes full circle to data, right? It's how that data is entered, because a lot of medical data is unstructured. And I think that's probably our biggest obstacle when it comes to doing a lot of the research, because of the unstructured data. And because healthcare data is, like, I think, what's the number, tripling every few months or so. It's not, we're not able to keep up with it in terms of using AI models to train this data. So to your point, creating small language models or regional models for specific uses is going to become more and more of the norm. And in fact, I think that's probably a better way to approach the integration of these models into patient care. Because, I mean, here in the US, same thing in India, is a patient seen in Delhi and a patient seen in Mumbai, a patient seen in New York and a patient seen in Denver, Colorado, completely different zip code, completely different social determinants of health. We're looking at completely different, a completely different patient as we're looking. And that will help us as we start regionalizing these small language models. We'll be able to truly address all the things that actually matter and all the things that happen outside of the four walls of a clinic, right? Healthcare happens outside of clinic, right? We just get the little glimpse of it. And we're going to be able to really precisely care for a patient. And that is the true mark of what precision and personalized medicine is going to be in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years, Amit? What do you think, if I'm not being too optimistic?
Yeah, I guess in the next 5 years, definitely. I think this trend has already started. I think I can see people have a little bit consciousness about data literacy. People were skeptical, at least here in India, that their data will be stolen, it will be misused. Who owns the data? What about the privacy? Who am I answerable to if I'm sharing the data, etc. But I think that literacy is gradually coming in. Here in India, the government is coming up with the Ayushman Digital Bharat mission, which is going to actually digitalize most of the health records. And that's going to be a big step forward in data interoperability. So that is very important. The other aspect that I wanted to touch here was, if you have smaller language models being built more region specific, one, it's going to be also more closer to the ethical guidelines of that particular country or space. But more importantly, when these models are being built, it's going to have the human in the loop. And I think we've always spoken about having that human connect and the human checkpoint in the loop when these models are being built and it's being evaluated and it's being validated. And there's one project that we worked on, and I'm going to come back to that maybe later at the end of it, and we can tell you about how we did that. But this human in the loop connection is very, very important. And maybe a small and a medium language model is going to be cheaper. It's going to be more sustainable. It's going to use less of energy, less of carbon footprints, less of token size, and it's going to be effective. And perhaps that would be one very tiny step towards taking equitable healthcare for all using AI. I think that's the whole purpose, right? If you can have some kind of source to have equitable healthcare. So I think I'm really excited to see the development of these models, and if they're working in that space, I would really say that yes, we are heading in the right direction with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think you're right. The promise of truly democratizing access to care and the kind of care, quality care, right, is there with AI. It's definitely there. I think it is the human who needs to kind of say, yes, this is what we want to do. And I think the regulatory space is probably the space that's going to help drive a lot of this, right? What are we doing for good? And that brings me to William Weeks's episode, where he's written a book. He works for Microsoft, and he's written a book called AI for Good. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Amit? The work he's doing is fantastic in this space.
Yeah, I think we were both there on that episode, and it was a fantastic episode. Again, it was a star episode. We had a lot of viewership in that episode. A lot of people had questions, and I was quite fascinated with this initiative that Microsoft has taken, that they're going to be supporting research work if it's meant for good, beyond the phase of healthcare as well. But we spoke specifically on healthcare. And we realized that this is a fantastic initiative of Microsoft in globalizing data. And I think that is so important, because if you have a globalization of data, of course, de-identified data for the right purpose, I think it's going to do a lot of good in building the models that we just spoke about, the small and the medium language models, better use of more conversation and generative AI, and again taking that one step towards equitable distribution of healthcare. And so far, I would be very optimistic in saying that the big players in the game of AI, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Google, whether it's Microsoft, have been doing a very fair and an ethical task of equitably distributing AI. I would say so. Although subscription of
so
OpenAI
far.
is still very high for many, yes, but it's still they're doing a good job because the cost is high. But we still have a lot of models that you can use free of cost, and you have access to it on the open platforms. You have the whole of GitHub from where you can actually build on certain models, build on no-code tools. So I still feel there is equitable use of AI. Whether it's going to translate into equitable distribution and use of healthcare, it's a matter of time for us to see.
That's true. You're absolutely right. There's so many tools available free for us to use that it is definitely a lot more. It's more about what you're going to end up doing with that and that next level of, are you going to choose to kind of pay it forward, right, as you build more and more. So I agree. I also loved when William talked about the AI for good, and one of the focuses he had also was trying to address bias in our models, which is also a part of an ethical concern. I think eliminating and completely eliminating bias in models is probably not possible, because we do need some level of it to make certain decisions, right? Whether this person has high blood pressure and diabetes, that in and of itself is a bias if you look at it. So, but his approach to eliminating the racial and ethical and cultural and gender biases in these models was an interesting part of that podcast for me. So.
The whole essence of using technology, and as we always say, AI is a tool, it's a technology, is in its accessibility, affordability, and availability. And if these three purposes are defeated, then it's not useful. It's not useful to anybody in the world. So at any point when we are using and we are trying to make the best use of AI, we must keep these 3 points in mind: that it has to be available, it has to be accessible by one and all, and it has to be affordable by the majority of the section of the society. Again, there is a global diversification there, but at least it should be available. But that brings me to a very interesting point. We are evolving in the field of digital health space, and you have recently written a book on digital health, Dipu.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Could you tell our audiences, and could you tell me about that book?
Absolutely. Actually, Amit contributed to a chapter in this book, and it's called Digital Health, Telemedicine and Beyond, and I'm the editor. Of course, I did not do this solo. I had a long list of amazing experts and contributors. Amit was one of them. And Dr. Harvey Castro, among many of the people we have spoken and had on our podcast. But the book is really geared towards thinking about where we are and where we're headed, right? Now, it's definitely one of those books that has started 2 years ago in my mind, and it's about to get published in November. So you should definitely grab a copy for yourself. If you're a medical student, this must be a must read for you. It's an excellent textbook to have. Because it will teach you the basics of AI, much like Amit and I started talking at the beginning, but it'll also tell you and teach you how to think about your future career and your future practice as a budding clinician. For those of you who are clinicians, it will certainly give you a great view of what the current landscape is and what the future landscape is going to be, what the future of primary care will look like, what your office may look like in the future. One of the things that I'm most proud of, in addition to all the contributors, there are 4 contributors I'm really proud of, which are students who are currently in PA school. 2 of the students who actually were pursuing the doctorate in the program that I teach in, and their project, which is digitizing wound care instructions, is one of the chapters in this book. And the other 2 are PA students. One writes about his experience in teleinterpretation, and one about telehealth in general and how it's going to impact her practice in the future. So it's the first time, at least that I know of, that students have contributed and published in this book. And so I think there's something in there for everybody. And I encourage you to pre-order your book now, because it's definitely going to be something that's that you're going to want to read.
This just reminds me about what I keep telling our doctors in the student wing of Doctors AI, is that this is one space where we're going to be learning from each other. Yeah. And it's never always that you need to learn from your professors, but this is at this juncture, even the professors need to learn from the students, and vice versa.
And I'm learning from the student. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
We are all teaching each other, and I think sometimes some of the students come up and tell me that, we have this kind of a tool, and what is your experience and what is your thought on this? And I'm hearing it for the first time from you. Let me explore it and get back to you. So
That's right.
we
And
keep learning.
that
I mean,
happens
it's just
all
a
the
bite
time to
size.
me. Yes, because, and that happens to me all the time because I have two teenagers, and believe me,
Yeah.
they have a sense of tools that I'm like, I didn't know this existed. They still make fun of me because I don't use my iPhone the way they think I should. But, yeah, it's definitely a two-way street. Gone are the days where I'm the expert, I'm the teacher, I'm the professor, you listen to what I'm saying. Those days are not, they're gone, actually, because there's too much to learn from each other for us to dismiss anything that you would bring to the table as a student.
Absolutely. I think that's how learning should be. It should be a continuous process, and it should be from one and all. And
Yeah.
AI is a space where we all will be learning together. The professor and the teacher and the student will be sitting on the same side of the table, learning from each other. I think that is going to be something interesting to see. But having said that, it's always going to be needing the human in the loop. And I think this was one episode we did with Sandeep from Australia, where we looked at evaluation of language models, because he had a paper on this. And this was a space I always wanted to explore, that, how best we could form frameworks and structures on which we could evaluate a language model, whether it's a small, a medium, or a large language model. And that is so important in today's context. So we did some research on this as well, and I'm very proud to say that we from India had developed a chatbot called Madhu AI. Madhu is metabolic and diabetes health assistant, and the word Madhu actually means honey or sugar.
Yes.
And it is that's how it's synonymous with being a metabolic and diabetes health assistant. So Madhu is the best part of Madhu is not in building it, but in the research that we have weaved around it. So it's predominantly a chatbot which has a WhatsApp user interface, and it just connects you on the WhatsApp with the power of artificial intelligence, which has been built over a fine-tuned large language model. But on top of that, this language model has also been fine-tuned. So this is what Madhu may get so interesting, because we had a team of researchers of more than 15 doctors across the country that has spent over 3 months in using Madhu as a patient. So they role played as a patient, and we validated the responses of Madhu, and on certain parameters in terms of its relevance, in terms of its coherence, in terms of its ability to do harm. And we now have it available to use, and some of our clinician friends are already using it, and they're giving it to their patients. And we have launched this in most of our platforms in India, and people have given us fantastic reviews and feedback. So the takeaway point here is, dear friends, that when we are trying to understand a need gap and we are trying to develop a AI tool, it's not just about building the tool, but it's also about weaving the research behind it so that it can be evaluated and validated by your peer groups, so that one day when your friends are using it and when your colleagues are using it, they feel safe to use it. And trust me, with this, the adoption is going to also increase. And this is also a message to all our tech developer friends out there. Like, I mean, so much of people we see in the tech world who are trying to develop a lot of AI tools that needs to be that they're trying to solve certain problems with. But it's important that you get their tools validated, and that's why you can reach out to us at Doctors AI. You can reach out to Dipu, myself, and our other members at Doctors AI, where we could structure a framework and help you in validating this tool. So a lot of exciting work we are doing there, and a lot of exciting times coming ahead.
I want to make a point about Madhu, which is it is truly patient-centered. You notice that it is not starting with what makes things easier for the physician or the clinician. It is about patient education, right? That is what it was developed for. So if this is truly keeping patient-centered care at the core of everything you do. If you have the adoption of the patient or the consumer, if whatever term you want to use, you're going to see an increased validation, because if they use it, it will only help you in the long run. And so I think to a point of, as we develop more and more of these tools, is that this is an excellent example of how the team has kept patients at the center at the core of the decision making, while making sure that the adoption rate is there, but it's done safely. The second point I want to make is that it's not only available in English. Do you want to tell them about what other languages it's available in, Amit, so that we can?
Yeah. So also we'll be posting out the link how you can use Madhu AI. That'll come up right maybe after this podcast. You could find it in the chat box, both on YouTube and the MedSynapse platform. You folks could explore it yourself. And yes, it does come in all the regional languages in India. We have already tested on that, and some of the foreign languages like German, Arabic, and Chinese as well. And I mean, you could be using it in your language, maybe French, Italian, and let us know whether it works in your language as well. So that's, and we're adding voice assistant to that as well. So that is something that we're trying to explore while we are developing that.
And also such a great chronic disease to focus on, because the burden of this disease is not just insulin and glucose control, right? Like it is the cardiac, the downstream cardiac impact of this metabolic disease. So that's fantastic. Well, I know we're coming up to the end of our hour here, Amit. I want to just briefly touch upon what we think the next year or two is going to bring. We will reach our 1-year anniversary of this podcast in September. And I'm like so immensely proud of the work that we've created here, the work we've done. I'm honored to have the guests we've had. I cannot wait to see the guests we bring next year. I want to say that this space, as it grows, as it evolves, it really makes me, I've been a clinician for 24 years now. It has reinvigorated me in terms of the optimism I have around the future of clinical practice and patient care. As we mentioned, burnout is a real thing, and I think that the new generation has something to be optimistic about in terms of finding that better work-life balance, should they want it, because not everyone wants that, but should they want it, I think AI is going to help us do that. What I foresee in 2025 is a transition of kind of more of the things that we're seeing in 2024. I think it won't be until the end of next year that we see another uptick. A lot will depend on when GPT-5 and what the other LLMs end up doing in terms of their upgrades. But like you, I would love to see in 2025 a medical LLM come to market. I think that might be a wish list item for me, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's all of our wish list as well. And to all our friends, I would just say that, you need to get curious about this. You need to start adopting, and you need to start learning about artificial intelligence. And I think this is no longer a thing that you can stay away from. And I think we've seen this in our workshops, in the courses that we conduct. And if you can, feel free to reach out to us through the Doctors AI community platform, and we can help you enroll in any of our courses in the workshop, where we will be teaching you some of the basics. And I'm sure Dipu will be coming up with similar workshops for our friends in the US as well.
If you're interested, let us know now. Reach out to me now. We'd love to put something on the books for our US audience.
Yes, at the specific time zone. So, Dipu, I've been seeing that we have a global audience, and the last I learned from the MedSynapse team that we have got a fantastic viewership from across the globe in 60 countries. So we've got a couple of questions which I can see, and I would like Hitvi to also come up on screen at this point, as we're almost at the end of the session. But I'm going to take up these couple of questions which I see in the chat box of the MedSynapse platform. Great. So I'm going to take up one question. There's a lot of questions, but I can't take all of them. But really, thank you guys for writing to us, and we'll try to answer them through the platform later, maybe. But this one comes from Simon Chiahanga, and he's from South Africa, and he says Simon, sorry, and Simon wants to ask that what are the most promising applications of AI in healthcare today? So if you have to say, Dipu, let's say the top 5.
So most promising or most actually applicable? I will mix them both together. Clinical documentation is one, I think, at the top, which is a low-hanging fruit, and I think is happening across the board. Diagnosing of rare diseases is another one. A lot of not only patients, but clinicians are using it as well. Diagnostic study interpretation and clinical decision making are also part of this ecosystem. And then, my area of interest and expertise, medical education. What are we learning and how are we learning it? I think that those 5 areas are definitely in this space, are solidified, I would say, and they're rooted now at this point. And we're, I think, going to see more and more growth in these 5 areas. What do you think, Amit?
I completely echo with what you said, but I would also like to add that you could use a lot of your AI in doing your medical research. So that is also a space of promising tools because, there is no science without research. Your research is the evidence of your science that you're talking about. So at this point, today, with so much of generative AI and extractive AI around us, we should really harness this technology in improving the quality of our research work, bringing out more and more real world evidences right from your clinic, right from your hospital, because that is actually going to transform healthcare. As a clinician practicing in India and having an experience of more than 12, 15 years of practice, there's one thing I can say. What is there in the clinical trials is something far different than what is in the real world evidences. There's a huge gap. And we need to transform this. We need to close this gap. And with that, maybe probably we will be heading into a data-driven intelligence-based here. There's another question that's going to come in, and I'm going to also put that to you. But this question is from Dr. Dhanpal Manakapure. He's from India, and he wants to ask that, can artificial intelligence help in reducing healthcare costs while maintaining or improving the quality of care?
So the simple answer is yes. The long answer is if humans want it to happen, right? This is where the human in the loop component comes in. The answer is yes. The promise of AI, and it's not only AI, by the way, all of the technologies that kind of bud from this space have the promise to reduce the cost burden on society and culture. It is the systems and the regulatory spaces that are going to help us define how we do this and the framework. And that's going to be up to us as clinicians to demand that we want this. It makes it more efficient and allows us to provide timely, high quality care. An example I can give here in the US is something called the prior authorization process, which probably is not something that happens in India, but in the US, it's something that's done very commonly for a lot of oncologic drugs, for example. And we have to gain prior authorization from the insurance companies to administer whatever regimen based on the cancer. That can take sometimes weeks to get approval from the insurance company. And we all know in cancer and oncologic care, we don't have weeks. We want to start treatment right away. Is there a way that we can use AI systems and tools to make that prior authorization process faster? Or is there a need for it, right? Like that's another part. Is there a need? If a physician who is following, let's say, NCCN guidelines and saying, this is the regimen for this stage of cancer and this type of cancer, do we need a prior authorization from an insurance company to follow standard of care, right? So these are the kinds of questions that are being asked here. And are there processes and workflows that can be made more efficient? That would reduce burden, right? A lot of things, and the perception of the US healthcare system is that we're very paperclip heavy and not patient focused, which is true in a certain way. And so can we do something to lighten the load of the paperclip? And I think AI can.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more point to this, is that AI has to come in its simplest form for the clinicians to adopt.
First,
whenever we talk about technology, there is always a phase of people who find it very hard to adopt, and it becomes a burden for them to shift gears. I think this is an example where you see in the US, and I think you can tell about this, is that too much of digitalization kind of also takes away a lot of time in documentation where you're not able to deliver the care. So that's where AI should come in, because it has to automate those logistics and those processes which can be automated, and it can reduce your burden. It's reduce your time that you take to do a thing. So I think that is very important. And if that can be done, then care can be given to more at a speed and at a more effective way. And that is going to bring down the healthcare cost. So I think that is a space that needs to be looked at as well.
Agreed. I also think that AI is going to impact the healthcare workforce because we don't have enough healthcare providers globally to address and care for the current population. Forget 5 and 10 years from now. We don't have enough to take care of the current population. We're going to need to think innovatively in how we train our future healthcare providers so that they can be efficient, they can be patient-centered, and that we are looking at optimizing our current healthcare workforce to work at the top of their licenses.
So I'm going to bring in Hetvi at this point of time, and this one is going to be a surprise for Hetvi. So Hetvi has been a patient listener to all our podcasts. So one question that comes to your mind, Hetvi, about artificial intelligence. Your question, we're going to be answering this.
So one question, I think I have conversed with a lot of doctors also till now. So from their point of view also I'll see, and I might ask that. I think a lot of time everybody has answered this, but still in the coming 5 years, I would like to know how AI will be changing the future in terms of patient-centered and doctors, and how should patients also everyone should be aware of it.
This is a very good question. So I'm going to take this up and then I'm going to put it to Dipu for her opinion. So, you see the space of clinical documentation and the use of artificial intelligence in clinical decision support system. I think that is going to be coming in the near future. So you would have AI integrated into the electronic health record system that the doctors will be using. Now, the trick part here is educating the patient of how much of AI is being used to treat them. And that is where the AI literacy is not just important amongst the clinician, but also amongst the general public as a whole. That is not there. You have AI literacy in specific domains and specific spheres, like we at Doctors AI, MedSynapse, MedAI. We're taking this initiative for our peer groups. But as such, are the general public really aware of how AI space is developing? And are they really aware of how much of AI is involved in their in what they're receiving? Now, if it's in the banking sector, if it's in the sector of commerce, if it's in the sector of finance, if it's in the sector of stock exchange, there is ethical question to it, but it doesn't involve life and death. But if it's in the sector of healthcare, it involves a life and death kind of a question and a situation. So how much of AI is being used to treat me, I should be knowing, and maybe I should also have a say in how much of AI should be used in treating me. So that is a very important question that you have asked, and I would love to hear Dipu's point of view on this.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think what you're highlighting is what I think we've been saying, which is the patient is going to drive how much and how quickly we adopt the use of AI as clinicians. If the patient doesn't want it, then we're not going to use it, right? And I think that really is the crux of it. If you look at the current, if you open up the App Store on your phone, you're going to see close to probably 3,500 health apps. It's probably the largest system, maybe after gaming. It's probably the largest ecosystem of apps on the App Store. The reason they're being developed is that they're seeing a need for it, but not all patients use it. So, right, like there are a handful of apps that are helpful that patients use consistently. And you'll often see that patients will bring those apps to the clinician. I'm using this app to track my weight. I'm using this one for my glucose monitoring. I'm using this. So those are the ones that are going to end up because those are patient adopted. The patients are telling us that they're good for us to use. They're easy for us to use. And that speaks to the AI and the digital health literacy component of what Amit was talking about. And so I think at the end of the day, that if the consumer doesn't want it, we're not going to end up using it, because I can tell you as a clinician, we have enough things to learn and keep in our brains And so if an app isn't useful to you, then why would I learn how to use it as a clinician if it's not going to help my patient? So I think the power lies more with the patient than it does with the clinician.
Very true. Very true. And at this point of time, just to add one line to this, as clinicians, as healthcare professionals, it is also important for us to be the human in the loop checkpoint at this in every space where AI is being used. Absolutely. As a patient or as a care receiver, you should also be aware of the human in the loop in that AI tool. So you should not be more prone to be using an AI tool which does not have the human in the loop. Rather, use an AI tool which does have the human in the loop connection. And for us as clinicians, it is augmented intelligence. This is what we keep saying. It's not artificial intelligence. It's human intelligence plus artificial intelligence. And together, it's augmented intelligence that we need to use, especially in the space of healthcare. Because nowhere artificial intelligence can replace you. And it is more important is that you don't get automated as a clinician and you don't fall into the trap of automation bias, because that is where you risk losing your cognitive skills. And we know practicing medicine is a lot about having a good cognitive skills. And we don't want to lose that at any point of time. So dear folks, a lot to do. Trust me, with AI in the loop and with human in the AI loop, we have our hands full. So nobody is getting replaced. We are here to stay. AI is also here to stay. And it's going to only make our life and our patient care better and more patient-centric. So I guess I'll take a final note from Dipu, and then I'm going to announce a fantastic event that we are coming up with that in December. Maybe I would allow Dipu to announce that, and then I will tell you more about that.
Okay. Well, first, I'm going to close with actually thanking our production team. So MedSynapse, Hetvi, Harshita, everyone behind the scenes who allows us to put this podcast together seamlessly, works with us and work with all of our guests and make them feel welcome. So I want to thank you. This would not be possible without all of you. So the exciting event that we're actually planning on, we're announcing is December 14th and 15th. Doctors AI will be hosting a global virtual AI summit. And we're really excited because this is the first of its kind that is being offered to a global audience. And we're hoping that you'll register. And we're looking forward to having a lot of exciting speakers over the 2 days that we're presenting this conference. So Amit, I'll let you kind of tell us the details.
What we can promise you is this is going to be the first summit in the world where we will be very comprehensive about and touch on all aspects of the use of AI in healthcare. And I'm going to promise you that Dipu, myself, and a whole host of our organizing team are going to be working very hard in bringing the best of the best across the globe right here on this platform so that we can hear from them their insights about their expertise in their subject on the space of AI. So after this, I'm sure Hetvi is going to share out the link, and you can also find that on the MedSynapse platform. And please do register. We have the early bird registration on. That's going to be there till 15th of September. Please register. You can register from all across the globe. And we have very nominal registration charges, no matter from which part of the globe you're there. Do register. It's a virtual event, 2-day event on the MedSynapse platform. And trust me, it's going to be very insightful, very exciting. And it's really going to be opening up a lot of space for collaborations with not just researchers, academicians, and clinicians across the globe, but it will also be a fantastic opportunity to network with also the people from the tech space who are building a lot of AI tools, which are going to be here in the years to come. So I would invite all of you to please register as soon as possible before 15th of September, and while this early bird registration nominal fee is on.
I want to encourage all of our students in our audience to attend for this. It's a very low fee for the quality and the expertise you're going to get through this conference. So definitely take the time to register.
Yes. So back to Hetvi.
Yes, it is. Trust me, it is very insightful, and we're working really hard to make it go all out. So please register on it, and I'll be putting the links also to it. And for this session, let me tell you, it was an insightful discussion that was there. And as we bring this special episode, 25th episode, to a close, I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude to Dr. Dipu and Dr. Amit for sharing their expertise and forward-thinking perspectives on AI in healthcare. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as we look forward to the next episodes, I hope our listeners will continue to join us on this exciting journey. And trust me, there is so much more to explore in the world of AI and healthcare. And we are thrilled to have you all join with us again and again. Thank you and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.